Thank you, Presiding Officer. Presiding Officer, aspects of this debate have been really good to hear. It's clear that there's cross-party consensus on the benefits of buses, and Alex Rowley described them as a key lifeline service. Maurice Golden developed that to describe them as lifelines in our communities, providing the most vulnerable with everyday access to shopping, services and socialising. And Brian Whittle stressed just how important a role Scotland's bus networks have to play in reaching our net zero targets. And it was really important to hear about the challenges faced by our bus operators. For example, the cuts to local authorities that left COSLA warning incredibly stretched levels of funding will prevent councils from providing the bus services they are currently providing. Maurice Golden told us it's happening in Dundee right now. And just today, the P&J reports that Stagecoach has slashed bus services across Aberdeen and the Shire following council cuts. We heard from Brian Whittle about the lack of investment in renewables charging infrastructure. And we heard about the Scottish Government's decision to cut the network support grant in March, which has led to operators warning of rises in fares and a reduction in services. And that lack of support is stark. The Confederation of Passenger Transport tells us that even though the bus sector accounts for 75% of all public transport trips, First Bus pointed out that each bus journey is supported by 27p from the Scottish Government. Now, in contrast, the train gets £3.27 per trip. And that cross-modal piece is important, which is why the failures to introduce a cross-modal travel card and to conduct a fair fares review is so concerning. But what has been so thoroughly depressing, Presiding Officer, and this is a point that was well made by Alex Rowley at the head of the debate, whilst we've heard from Graham Simpson that the government's goal is to remove the majority of the country's diesel bus fleet in favour of zero-emission models by the end of 23, but has achieved a mere 16%, whilst we heard from Brian Whittle that the target to reduce car kilometres by 20% by 2030 lacks detail and credibility, and whilst we heard that the Scottish Government's £500 million bus partnership fund to deliver bus priority measures has paid out just 5% since 2019. The Scottish Government, nevertheless, comes to this chamber with an amendment that utterly fails to acknowledge the issues and instead tries to present a picture in which all in the garden is rosy. And on the rare occasions where issues were acknowledged by speakers like Fiona Hyslop and Keith Brown, they then come back and blame the operators, the councils, the pandemic, and try to distract from their failings in this chamber by talking about Wales. And that is what I find the most galling, Presiding Officer. As Monica Lennon put it, we cannot solve a problem if we don't admit it in the first place. If this government will not acknowledge the problems and challenges, it cannot meaningfully implement the solutions. And we've all been sent those solutions. We've been sent really exciting, data-driven, evidence-based, detailed solutions by Transform Scotland, the Confederation of Passenger Transport, First Bus, the Poverty Alliance, Friends of the Earth Scotland and more. But in contrast, as Alex Rowley said, we've heard no vision, no clue, and this government will continue to fail the people of Scotland. So, Presiding Officer, all of those organisations are watching to see if this government will acknowledge the problems, listen to the opposition benches today and learn from those submissions. Or will the SNP and Green MSPs vote at decision time for a weak amendment and more decline under this failing government? We shall see.
Thank you, Mr Kerr.